make this short and sweet. So I'm myself Sanoop. I'm working as an independent researcher now. The talk is actually about a tool or a framework that I've developed based on Nmap script. Before going to the subjects, I want to know like how many of you have used Nmap. I know it's a very stupid question to ask in nullcon. Okay, great. So the inspiration of this development or a research was as a security guy, the initial lessons of InfoSec was started by PortScan. So obviously the tool was Nmap. When I started realizing that Nmap is much beyond that just a port scan, it's more than a information gathering tool. I started learning more about NSEs, which is called Nmap script engine. Now, Nmap script engine have evolved a lot better today with possibly 500 plus scripts to identify vulnerabilities, brute force, exploits, and whatnot. Then the challenge on writing Nmap script was, we don't have any IDEs as such. So it was very difficult to basically write scripts from the scratch by traditional text editors. So there was no debugging options. You'll have to actually write the script, run it through Nmap with the debugging options and a lot of other syntaxes. Nmap is actually developed on a very lightweight, very easy use language called Lua. So Lua, I think most of the guys actually might have used Lua unknowingly or unknowingly. How many of you have played a game called Angry Bird? Angry Bird? Okay. Angry Bird actually uses Lua. Or else most of the InfoSec guys who have actually worked on Wireshark actually use Lua languages. Now, Lua is basically an interpreter, so there is no compilation required for it. So you can run the code directly from the source, right? All right, just identify this screen. Anyone have noticed this? Die Hard 4. So if you actually observe the screen, the guy was actually running Nmap scan on scanme.nmap.org. And Fyodor has a tool list also. I think it's called sec tools or something on that with an aggressive mode. So the reason I picked up this screenshot was aggressive scan actually takes Nmap scripts and run the scans. Now the point of aggressive scans are when you run aggressive scans, don't think that if you have 500 plus scripts in your repository, Nmap does not run all the scripts in a shot. So scripts are actually conditional based. So when a particular conditions are available on the scan result, then only the script will start executed. So for example, if you have an FTP server running on the servers, running on the target machines, then only it will run possibly an FTP anonymous script. If an FTP is not available there, it basically avoid all the FTP related scans and move forward, right? Okay, so as I said, the developing challenges, the first challenge was to basically deal with the Lua script. So because Lua language are not really a high level language like Java or .NET or Python or any other sort of language. So there was a lot of difficulties in parsing the results. For example, if you run the scan, get some response back, and you'll have to parse it from the response and display it from a proper format. So these functions like string, especially string functions, to trim it, to split it, and to fetch those juicy component from the response are not really easy to use. And Nmap uses two things. One is the lower language syntaxes. That's the fundamental part of Nmap scripts. But more than that, Nmap uses a lot of prototypes, a lot of syntax, a lot of functions from Nmap own library, and which is available in NSE doc repositories. They have an online wiki available there, right? So if anyone wants to write Nmap from scratch, they'll have to actually go to nmap.org/nscdoc, the website, go through the repository, see the prototypes, what function it actually takes, what are the parameters it is accepting, what it responds, and how it's getting processed. So every time when you write scripts, it becomes a tedious job to go to the repositories and look for the documentations. It's actually good practice to learn the syntax and functions, but it becomes a repeated task, right? My script was largely focusing on HTTP or HTTPS based protocols, basically web based protocols. If you look at Nmap repository closely today, you can actually identify a SQL injection or an XSS from just an Nmap scan. So Nmap was actually converting into a web application scanners eventually from just network scans, right? All right. The environment that I've built, or the IDE that I've built, actually supports language intelligence, which means it's a very similar to all other IDEs that we have, like Visual Studios or Eclipse or NetBeans or any other IDEs that we have. It actually identifies the syntax. So it identifies lower syntax, plus it identifies Nmap function syntax as well, right? Most of the IDs are not really friendly if you don't have an autocomplete options. You have that fast typing skills. And because you don't really remember the prototypes and the function names and stuff. So the IDEs also supports auto-completion options. And on the fly, without bothering about the syntax, without bothering about the whole command environment, you can easily run debugging options within the IDE. So in the developing environment itself, you can actually debug an NSC script and make sure that it's error-free. And after all, it's a GUI, so it becomes more easy for people to go with the graphical environment and write scripts very fast. And the tool as of now is completely free to use. It's on the GitHub, so feel free to download it and use it. It's developed on Java platforms, so it runs on any operating systems wherever a Java runtime environment is running. It runs on Windows, Linux, and Mac, and all other operating systems. Now, this is how the GUI look like. I would better take you to a live demo. Like we'll quickly write a script, see the functionalities of the IDs, and we'll run a scan possibly on a target and see if we can get information on that. Most importantly, I want to basically figure out how fast we can write scripts from Nmap. It's not really difficult, or it's not a tough job to write an NSC scripts. Okay, that's how the IDE looks like. It has a typical toolbar, and the list that you can actually find out here is currently available NSCs in your environment. Now, these variables are identified from the local systems. If for the very first time, if you are running Halcyon framework, maybe you won't get the list here. The reason because maybe your environment variable or the Nmap installation path must have a different directories, right? So in that cases, you have a settings where it basically pick up what's your local Nmap installation directories, where the Nmap binaries are located, and where is the script path, and where are the other data paths, etc. Now these files are very important. For example, if you're running a brute force scan on a authentication service, for example FTP or HTTP authentication or any such that, Nmap don't have a blind brute force word list. Nmap has a very commonly used word list. Like for example, admin blank, admin password. So these are like very generically used word list. These word lists are actually located in Nmap data directory. So all these paths are actually important to start with the developing environment, right? Once you have this, so all these libraries, data files, and everything are actually listed here. You can open that, maybe edit it. If you want to edit more password into the word list, you can do that from within the environment itself, right? Now, a very simple way to actually start writing an Nmap script. It allows you to basically start a new project. For example, if I create a script name, we will run a script for a very recent vulnerability. I think the very noisy vulnerability last year called shell shock or bash shock, right? .nsc, we can save it on the desktop. You can give relevant details on it, the author's name, which port number that you're actually running the scan. You can give, we are running on an 80 because shell shock was available on a CGI based web application, so you can do that. And categories. So these categories actually tells that your NSEs are exploit based NSEs, or is just a vulnerability detection, or it's a brute force, intrusive, or whatnot. So we can say it's a vulnerability and safe. So it has a multi-select. You can select multiple categories if you want. License is a default license, which basically take license from Nmap official license. So Nmap, all NSEs are actually under Nmap license. So we can give that. If you want a custom license, you can give that option as well, right? Once you create it, the skeleton that you get is a very common skeleton for all Nmap scripts available till date. So this actually avoids the repeated coding. The basic skeletons are done. So this is very similar to like you create a new project for a Java, and a main Java class or a default Java class skeleton was actually written on it, right? Now, how many of you have know what shell shock vulnerabilities are? All right. So especially on a CGI based application, a shell shock vulnerability can be identified and exploited using any HTTP headers. It can be user agent, or it can be possibly cookie values or anything that sort, right? So to create it, we'll have to actually give the path for the CGI script, right? And let's say you have an options to give the path in the IDE. So with Nmap script, if you're running an Nmap script, there is an option to give script arguments, and these arguments we can give it here, right? CGI bin / status. Right, I'm giving these are like very simple syntax to declare a variable with null character on it. Now these are the options that I want to actually show you. If you see these autocomplete options, it actually lists out the syntax automatically. So if I give this, it tells me that the complete if condition is there. If I want to give Nmap all right. This is basically to take the argument path into the local variable. So you'll get the local variables with the path informations, and you have an options. This is basically to create a header file, because you'll have to actually inject the shell shock attack vector through a HTTP header, right? These have, if you look at the functions, the host and port numbers means the IP addresses that you are going to scan and the port numbers that you're targeting. Host.ip, and you have user agent. This is the place where you actually give the shell shock attack vector, where you can give I'm just giving this attack vector. We can take etc password file from the machines. That could be possible here. Now the header actually crafted. Whatever be the HTTP header that you want, it was crafted here. It was having just a host IP addresses and the user agent. So we are actually injecting only through an user agent. Once this is crafted, you'll have to actually shoot these HTTP requests to the target machine, right? And that can be done using a command called HTTP. These are autocompletes that I've actually created. So this is generic request with a host, port number, method. The method that we are going to create is a get method. And we are going to point out only one particular path, which is the CJ bin / status, right? Now the status and R, every time this is a very generic function of HTTP library of Nmap, which returns the status code and the response. So if the status is like 200, okay, you'll get a 200 in status, and the entire response will be here. Now you can return response.raw header. This will return the value to your Nmap scan output. So when you run the Nmap scans, the return statement actually show the output back to your command prompt. Now you'll have to give the target IP address. I hope that my target IP address is 167.164. Port number has an options to give either, like you can give the service name like HTTP or FTP or SMTP like that, or you can, if you want to give a specific to port 80 numbers, you can give that as well. All right, you can give verbose and packet trace. Packet trace actually tells you what requests that you are sending to the target and what responses that you're getting, right? So we can enable that. That's all you need to do. You can run the script here. Now this is the output that you can, and the error actually shows that. Is it visible? If you want, if you see the error messages here, there is an error near to option. So you don't want to go to a command line and then debug it. It's available within the IDE itself. The possible okay, the reason, because I have given here as option and here as option. So I think there is a spell mistake. This is called local and as. Okay, let's run this again. Okay, HTTP library is not declared. You can see the easiness of debugging the script here. Okay, if you have seen the result here, can you see this? Right, these are basically HTTP, the etc password files. So you see the easiness of writing an Nmap script It's not tough. Initially even I have thought that learning a Lua language will be difficult, or learning Nmap syntaxes will be difficult, but it's a repeated task. And those repeated tasks I have actually comprised into one IDE there, where you can actually find auto completions and syntax highlights, debugging options, and so on and so forth. So this makes people to write more and more scripts to the community, and possibly build Nmap into a bigger form, right? Any questions? Okay, thank you guys. Yeah. Yeah, you can actually save that NSE script into the library and use it with Nmap. Yeah. Thank you.